This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Ilia Topuria, who this past weekend, opening the main card of the UFC pay-per-view, defeated Bryce Mitchell by submission via arm triangle at 3:10 of the second round mark. Let me start with you, my friend. Topuria's shine, man. What was your impression? What were your takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, it's official. We thought Ilia Topuria might be a problem, and this guy is a motherfucking problem. I mean, he showed out against Bryce Mitchell. A Bryce Mitchell who no one has been able to stop as of yet. Bryce Mitchell who was feeling so good about himself that he was sitting in pre-fight interviews saying he'd beat Volk if he got put in there with him today. And I don't know about Volk, but he certainly couldn't beat Ilia Topuria. And I said it last week. I still had a hard time picking the fight just because of how highly I rate Bryce. But I said it last week that Topuria is basically like the creative fighter skill set to beat Bryce Mitchell. And he was. The speed, the natural strength, the power, his own grappling pedigree. It was just a lot for Bryce Mitchell to try to counter and try to implement his game against. And, you know, he still showed flashes. Like at the end of round one, he got him down, started to work his game, a couple other moments in the fight. But he was just outgunned. Topuria carried so much more danger on the feet and was so much faster. His sprawl is so good. His strength in grappling defense situations really made Bryce work and made Bryce work harder than he's had to work to get things to the ground in the past. And then round two, from the time Ilia dropped Bryce onward, I mean, you really saw that fight start to open up. Ilia just started working him, bullying him, big brothering him basically. He was yanking him all around the octagon, landing big shots. And Bryce fought back to his feet at one point because Bryce is a warrior. I'm not trying to make it like as if Bryce suddenly isn't good. Bryce is good, and he was trying to battle in there. But he just it was too tough of a matchup for him. Ilia ends up yanking him right back down. He fucking ragdolls him on that takedown. It's one where he literally just yanked him straight to his back. Spins around, takes the back, sneaks in an arm triangle choke, and it's all over. So Ilia Topuria has arrived, as I said, and he did it in big statement fashion with, I don't want to say ease, but he kind of walked through Bryce Mitchell.
Omar, what stuck out to you in this performance from Topuria defeating Bryce Mitchell and looking so impressive and so dominant?
It was definitely the fight IQ. I think if you watch the Topuria measure in round one, he was extending his cross out, he was extending his jab out, almost kind of gauging his distance, measuring. I'm not a fan of his overreaching and his loading up. He loses a lot of balance when he does that. And his punches become really telegraphed when he does that as well. It might have been a calculated decision in thinking that Bryce Mitchell wouldn't be able to be fast enough to capitalize on those moments, but seems like a dangerous game to play at the elite of that division. Either way, taking round one to measure and to really gauge how he was going to annihilate Bryce Mitchell was fantastic. The low stance throughout the entire fight kind of gave me vibes of Rob Whittaker and that old Tough winner. I can't remember or the guy who was on Tough a long time ago, where Whittaker basically had one hand by his hip the entire time so that he could use a hook every time a takedown was coming in. And Topuria kind of had that same approach where he was just very low and didn't have to do much to keep his hips back and to keep Bryce Mitchell off of him. So once the second round came in, that's when Topuria really put power, really sat down on most of his punches. And he was cracking Bryce, man. I didn't care for the excuses after the fight either. I'm not... Apparently, Bryce was talking about how he had the flu and he didn't feel good and he should have pulled out of the fight and all this stuff.
Oh, really? I didn't hear this.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm personally not huge with that shit. Everybody's got something. I feel like nobody ends up going into the fight like, I'm 100%. To me, it is what it is. And if we're being really honest, looking at that fight, I didn't think Bryce Mitchell looked any worse than he normally does. I thought that he looked exactly the way I expected him to look in that fight. And I thought Ilia Topuria did exactly what I expected him to do in that fight as well. I don't remember what my pick was last week, but I'm pretty sure I had Topuria winning by some kind of finish. So it was glad to see some sort of validation in where Topuria is. But I think it shows a little bit of discrepancy in where Bryce Mitchell's game overall is when it comes to that division.
And especially his striking for the weight class. I mean, this is
100%.
kind of somewhat of a classic mold of a matchup between a guy who's predominantly a grappler in Bryce and a guy who's predominantly a very scary striker. I mean, and I'm not trying to underrate Topuria's overall skill set. And clearly, he was kind of getting the better of Bryce Mitchell on the ground as well. He was kind of having his way in pretty much all areas in that fight. And man, oh man, who is going to beat this guy at 145 pounds? Speaking of which, it takes me right into what is next let's stick with the winner here, Ilia Topuria at 145 pounds. Mark, you got a name for us?
I got one name. I don't know if it's going to happen, but to me, it's an obvious choice. Arnold Allen just got himself a fight. I mean, the guy's sitting there. He got left out in the cold when they booked Yair Rodriguez against Josh Emmett. He doesn't have anyone to fight. To me, he just got a dance partner. 2 undefeated fighters, Arnold Allen, Ilia Topuria. Let's run the damn thing.
Whew. Omar, any other ideas? I mean, he is breaking down the doors to this, upper echelon of 145. What do you think?
Yeah, I can see the argument for it, especially because Arnold Allen got shafted a little bit. But there are some other names that you could throw him in there right now against, especially somebody like a Giga Chikadze. They're basically one ranking away. Giga Chikadze, stylistically, I think would be a very interesting fight. I'm going to go with Giga Chikadze.
I mean, the top 10 or so of featherweight is like a murderer's row, and Topuria has fought none of them. So it's kind of like,
Right.
I'm like rubbing my hands together, man, and be like, let's fucking go with this guy. Let's see just how far he can go at 145 pounds. And it seems like he's a great matchup for just about anybody in the division, even though it's a division of killers. I mean, it's just so exciting. Cannot wait to see the guy fight again. Excuse me. Want to say anything about our loser this time in Bryce Mitchell and where he might match up next at featherweight? Omar, you want to take this one?
So I think that Bryce Mitchell is probably going to need a minute at this point. I don't expect him back all too quickly. Damon Jackson has a fight against Dan Ige in January, in the middle of January, and our first return back to the UFC from the new year. I think the winner of that fight should fight Bryce Mitchell. I think that would be a very interesting fight.
Mr. Priel.
That's fair. I like that. My Bryce matchup was actually Giga Chikadze.
Yeah.
Both coming off a loss.
Yeah, I like that too.
Both do the thing that could possibly expose the other guy. So I figured throw them in there and see who can show their worth and come out on top of that one to kind of maintain that they're an actual contender.
Yeah, it would be another striker versus grappler sort of chess match against Chikadze,
Yes.
maybe even to an even greater degree. Super interesting because Chikadze is a super long striker who uses those long kicks. This guy also has great size and length for the division, so that would be very, very interesting. Okay,
That one is true extremes, like
yes.
10-1 in grappling and 10-1 in striking.
Yeah, man. In the interest of time, gentlemen, because once again we've gotten a little bit of a late start, let us try to plow ahead. Congrats to Topuria for making it onto the marquee this week on our show.
Do you know who Ilia Topuria certainly should not fight? Patty Pimblett.
Fucking Patty Pimblett. Jesus, Mary and Joseph.
Because it would not go well.
We will get
That's
there.
that's a murder right there.
We will get there. We will get there.